once again, I'm very happy to have on the telephone, all the way from England. I'm not going to say Scotland or Essex this time. Dodie Hamilton. And Dodie and I are going to talk about ghosts. Now, ghosts, what does the word ghost mean? I mean, what's it all about? What is ghost?
I think the word itself has become a real problem because in my experience, there are so many little bits and pieces that we associate with the idea of a ghost that kind of don't fit into any kind of pattern. There are lots of ways of viewing that word, and I think it's become a little bit of a fright word. And it's associated automatically with somebody having died and passed over, and and therefore shouldn't be there, and it's become a scary thing. When in actual fact, there are so many variations on a theme that, hundreds really. So I think yes, we should change the word maybe to just happenings.
Okay, because I was going to say you've got ghosts, you've got poltergeists, you've got all these different things that all sort of get wrapped up in the mix. But we're talking about happenings. We're talking about spiritual things that occur.
Yes.
Now, I think everybody, and I don't care who you are, everybody has experienced something in their life, an occurrence, a happening, something that they maybe can't just describe very, very easily. Do you find that people are very reticent to talk about it?
No. All it needs is the tap to be turned on. You only need you only need to be, say, with 2 or 3 people, and somebody has a cause to mention that they think they have, or that they dreamt they have, or that they thought they saw, and then invariably someone else will say, yes, that happened to me, or I saw this. So I think people are reluctant to talk about it until they're given the intro, and then there's not really any problem at all. In fact, I was listening to a conversation the other day just about that, and it was at a Women's Institute thing, and there were women of all kinds of ages, and after the first sort of 5 minutes of someone saying, I think that I saw within that time, nearly everybody in that room was recounting some sort of happening.
Now, when you say dreams, I mean, obviously, a lot of people are going to say, oh, well, I dreamt it last night. But that may not actually be the case, may it?
No. Although dreams can take you into the realms of where you may be able to see or become in communication with perhaps that very thing, the identity or the lost remnant of something that's passed over. But I feel more and more that as people are aware of differences in life, they are now much more open to the idea of some reserve that can be left over after death, or something that remains within the heart of a building. I've been in buildings, specifically asked to go to buildings where there have been thoughts of perhaps some kind of haunting. And the immediate feeling is of curiosity, but not curiosity on my part, curiosity on the part of whatever is, shall we say, residing in the building other than the living people. And not at all a nasty curiosity, almost a kind of compassionate observation. Equally so, I've been in a normal household, say going for a cup of tea somewhere, and I walked in the door and I thought, whoa, something not too good here, and felt the presence of something really most unpleasant, which again was this feeling of who are you and what are you, but much more about why are you here. If I could tell you about a story that was told to me some years ago about a lady who works nights. It's a close friend of mine. She used to work nights. She was going through a patch in their life when they were a little bit hard up, so she used to go to work at nights. Every time she came home in the morning, she would sit on her sofa, cup of tea, put her feet up, got the children off to school, and she would close her eyes. And what would happen would as she did so, which is what I know, she would be drifting into a different kind of parallel, she would see a different fireplace, an older fireplace, superimposed over her own. And beside that fireplace would be this old gentleman sitting in a chair. This went on for weeks until she asked me to look at it. And we went together, the pair of us. And we tried to go the same way. I was there very early in the morning. She was very tired. She lay down. She slept. And yes, the old boy appeared. But what was so interesting was that this particular morning, she sat up and said, I was about to say, "What are you?" And he sat up and said at the exact same time, "Who are you? What are you doing in my house?" So my thoughts on that was that what we were actually seeing was really not anything really of ghostly form, but perhaps just a memory of the house, or even a time slip where in sleep this lady had moved into his time zone where he occupied the house, and he had his 1930s fireplace with the tiles and the little dog on the top and his old chair, and he slept, and he saw her from her 2004. And that was really interesting.
So basically,
he didn't come back after we had a little word. He wasn't ever seen again.
Fantastic. So with that, you could almost say that the two of them had met at a juncture in time. They'd almost crossed.
Absolutely. There's a marvelous book on the market where a man, it's called The Link. And it's where, as a young boy, a very famous healer, I won't go into his name, but an English chap, a really wonderful chap, his first name is Matthew, let's put it like that. He would go through a series of psychic experience all through his life, and things would appear on the wall. This is in his own home. Little bits of writing on the wall, little bits of conversation, who are you, whatever, until ultimately he was walking downstairs one morning, and coming up the stairs towards him was a gentleman completely dressed in his clothes of the time. Matthew walked nearer to him. The man they both had their eyes wide open in shock. And then they had enough time, and this is the most lovely part about it, and I remember thinking, oh wow, where they reached out and they shook hands before, I guess, on the man's side, Matthew disappeared, and on Matthew's side, the man disappeared.
How incredible.
Isn't that lovely? Yeah, that's in The Link.
Oh, fantastic. With things like this, these sort of occurrences, are they always sort of in older properties, or do you sometimes get them in new properties as well?
Oh, absolutely, Lee. They're everywhere. They're on the ground, really. They're not really actually usually to do with the bricks and mortar, although I do believe that bricks and mortar hold a memory. This house that I'm in now didn't have a memory at all when we moved in. When we moved in 87 from my old house, which was absolutely stacked to the walls with bits and pieces of every time and life, when we came in here, it was empty. It was weird. It was most uncomfortable. Walked in the house and I thought, wow, I don't like this. It's just empty. But I have to say that it's not empty anymore. Only yesterday I'm talking on Facebook and I looked and I thought, what's that? Slowly going by my window, where it can't be going by my window because there's no floor to walk on. And I thought, hello. We're off.
Amazing.
So it's the land, usually, Lee, the land.
Do you find that people attract happenings as well? I mean, if you are susceptible to that sort of thing, it's going to happen. If you're not susceptible to it, if you don't want it, if you don't believe in it, if you don't have anything to do with it, it's not going to happen.
I think that the second part is probably more true. If you don't believe in it, if you don't want it, then really you're projecting some thought patterns and a kind of armor plating that possibly you can't get through. I'm not sure that I think it can happen unwarranted. I have a very close friend, a lovely young woman who I'm very fond of, who I know that from quite an early age was bothered by some very disagreeable things. She actually is a profoundly spiritual human being, and I mean that in the best possible word. Not just somebody who footles around. You know, she's a lifesaver. She works with animals, with dolphins. She's a particularly fabulous person. But she was bothered, yes. It's gone now, but I don't think she wanted it, certainly.
And once again, I mean, we're talking as though all of these experiences can be good. But do they ever get bad? Do you ever get malevolent happenings occurring?
I have, yes, you do. You do. It's no good me being silly about it, because good manners is good manners, bad manners is bad manners. Good behavior and bad behavior are different. They don't stop when they don't suddenly cease to function when a consciousness changes, shall we say, world. The darkness that is imbued in someone, something, isn't automatically a cut-off point when they pass into death. And we are talking really about something that we need to be very careful and seriously about. And maybe this is a whole program, really, on its own. But I personally have never had any individual problems, yet I have had interactions with difficult energies. I made a great mistake one night and this is not that long ago, so one is constantly learning, of just before sleep saying in a very casual manner, fool me, oh, well, I'm bored at the moment, Lord, I'm talking to my teacher, I'm bored at the moment, you know, I've done it all, been in all, blah, 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 blah. You can send me what you like from wherever. I was so stupid. And I was paid back for it, because that particular night I was kept awake all night by doors rattling, by windows rattling. It may well have been my teacher giving me a salutary lesson, but the end product was a truly physical smack across the top of my head. It came through the window and bang, smacked me across the top of the head like you would smack a silly teenager or whatever, and then it went. But that was most unpleasant. It served me right.
Now, when we talk about happenings, I mean, we're talking about people, and we're talking about things happening in all sorts of different environments. But how can you be sure that what you're experiencing is actually a spiritual occurrence?
Well, I can't really answer that, because everything is a spirit. Everything has a spiritual. Everything is a spiritual occurrence that you can't. But I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Are you saying, is it of the mind rather than something that's gone bump in the night? But again, you see, that's a problem again, because everything is of the mind. But I take you literally, and I know exactly what you mean. Am I imagining it?
That's what you mean. Yes, that's what I mean. Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Well, imagination is a vast and wonderful thing, and we only really understand a slight percentage of it. But certainly one can produce, one can be scared by oneself. Yes, one can sort of think things up, imagine things, hype oneself up. But I truly believe that that's it's a more of a rare thing than a usual thing. When a person says to me, Dodie, I saw so-and-so, this, I will believe them first. And I will believe that what they are telling me is what they saw and what they genuinely felt, rather than a product of their imagination.
Okay, I want to take it a stage further, because that was actually leading on to something else, which was, when we're kids, I should think all of us at some point have had an imaginary friend.
Oh, yeah.
A friend that we know, we are totally convinced is there. There they are. We play with them. We talk to them. We swap toys with them. Whatever. Could that be?
Is that being there? Yes, absolutely. Yes, totally. Of course. You can dress it in whatever fashion. I have a little boyfriend who has a gorilla who sits in a tree, and he gets up in the tree and talks to the gorilla. I've heard all sorts of various shapes, teddy bears. One little boy I know has an invisible friend, but for his friend's hands. He can see his friend's hands, and his friends help him to do his homework, beautiful. And I absolutely believe that what happens is a combination of need arises in the child and is compensated and given life by the loving presence that are always, always, always available. And that if a little child is lonely, obviously, Lee, I could tell you so much, but the thing about prayer, there's a lot of stuff going around at the moment. I think it's a film that's come out called The Secret, and it's about wishing. Yeah. Well, about wishing and things happening. But really, there is a very fine dividing line between a wish and a prayer. And when a prayer is offered up, it needn't be, hello, Lord, I'm scared. It can be just simply a child thinking, I'm scared. I wish why don't I? And that why don't I will often be filled in by a loving communication. Probably not, shall we say, of a ghostly kind, but certainly of an angelic kind, and can use the face or the body or even the memory of someone that's gone over. That's always worth remembering, because love never dies. Mm. And if a child, say, is left alone because perhaps he's lost a brother or a sister or a mummy, and someone appears as a friend, you can bet your life that friend will have come with mummy's permission, right, and will just be as loving. Yeah. Ghosts are usually quite beautiful, They're not, well, they're portrayed to be in whatever films.
I once worked in a nightclub. I was managing the nightclub in Cheltenham. And it was a very, very old building. It had been a grain store for many, many years. And then it was left derelict, and then it had been converted into this rather wonderful nightclub, which was all sort of bare brick walls and things like that. They hadn't done it out like a normal nightclub. Lovely. And every so often, we'd have a visit. And this visit was from a man, I think his name was Mr. Reeve. And quite a few of the staff had seen him. Sometimes he'd get up to mischief, like he'd clear a tray of glasses and chuck them on the floor. Or he'd do something like that to get your attention. And I remember actually seeing him one night when it was about 3-4 o'clock in the morning. My car had broken down. I'd gone back into the nightclub because I thought, I'm not standing outside in the freezing cold waiting for the guys to come and put it right. And I remember watching him walk down the stairs from one of the upstairs parts of the club. And he looked at me, smiled, and then walked off. And
lovely.
It turned out that he'd had a rather tragic death. He'd hung himself in the building. Mm. But he'd never gone. He'd stayed there. Is that normally what it's like?
Well, again, really, you can't use the word normal. But if we go to a conversation that John Edwards and has been having, a friend about, can you actually order an energy to go? Do you need? I have a great problem with exorcism. I really do. And I know that angelic forces have the same problem with shall we say, the amateurs carrying out this up to the light business, when often the being that is staying chooses to stay for love or for care or for minding the business, or simply that they've got something that they feel they need to complete. And until they've completed it to their whatever satisfaction. And clearly your guy had something that he wanted to remain within the place that perhaps he loved.
Yeah.
And that's really his prerogative, isn't it? As long as he's not throwing too many trays of glasses around. And you can say, oh yeah, well, he shouldn't be, he should move on. No. Why should he move on? He will move on in his own good time, because he's not alone. That's the thing. Yeah. He won't have been wandering round that place unsupervised. No one is alone.
Oh,
No
yeah.
one.
He used to do some very funny things. The cellarman that we had there was only a young guy, was very, very aware of him and not bothered by him at all. And he told me a story one day when he was trying to connect up a barrel and the barrel virtually exploded and covered him in beer. And he turned around and Mr. Reeve was stood there giggling.
Yeah.
You know, and it's things like that.
See,
where
that's lovely.
you just
He
think,
obviously loved his life there
yes,
and felt sorry that he'd cut it short, perhaps, and thought, well, perhaps I'll give it a little bit more time. There are, of course, some very naughty things that happen.
yes,
You know, one should never discount. I was asked once to get involved with a church that was a little bit bothered, and the energies that were bothering that church, I think I may have told you this, were actually there were two children, as far as I could see them,
yes,
dressed up like Trinian kids. Do you remember St. Trinians?
yes,
They
yes.
looked like Bash Street boys and Bash Street girls. But that was how they had been, if you like, fudged down, because if I saw them in their reality, I wouldn't have been able to stand up, let alone do anything with them, because because we are human, we tend to give little remnants of life, bits that are passed on. We give it human form. We do it with angels, don't we? I mean, in the lighthouse keepers, Charlie, the archangel there, he takes on the form of a former RAF pilot because he just thinks, well, this will be useful and I can do this. And this is what happens with ghosts. Or any kind of thing attached to human life. It's no good them coming really as a metaphysical shape, say, of a triangle, because unless we perceive that as being normal, we wouldn't see it. But they could come as a child or as a man, because human beings love form. I think I told you, once saw an angel pass through a field, and the sole purpose of this angel was to filter pollution. And I could not see the start of the angel, and it was probably about a mile high, and just moved through the field, and you could see the animals all moving on one side. No, nothing was hurt, but you could see the intense clearing process that was going on. I mean, I was lucky to see that, but normally it's not within my human eyesight.
No. You're an author, and
Yes.
you write some fabulous books.
Thank you. Just got my 20th good review on Amazon, which apparently is a bit unheard of, 5-star and so. So yes,
well
I'm
done.
thrilled. Yes, thank you. That was the second chance.
Oh, excellent. Excellent. Do you find that you gain inspiration from happenings or things like
Oh,
that?
yeah. Oh, yeah. I would say 75% of what is in the Lighthouse Keepers is of my teacher. So the article that I'm running at the moment with a lovely chap called Arthur Webster on Facebook at the moment, we're talking about Lego and the idea of things being created on the world through Lego. And this marvelous man called Arthur, we've got this thing going, and he's promoting a lovely post this morning, and I got onto him and said, this is what I've written about. And we were comparing notes about the idea of great, wonderful gods moving their bits of Lego about, you know?
A wonderful thought.
Yeah. And so I would say, good 75% of the Lighthouse Keepers is my teacher talking and me having seen such things and talking together. A second chance is really much more about life after death, because in the sequel, Letters from Sophie, we find our hero's daughter, who has an eidetic memory, which is, as you know, once seen, never forgotten, once heard, never, ever, ever forgotten. She has this memory that is used over and over again in, shall we say, paranormal events. So, I love the whole idea of it. I just love it. It's food to me.
It's your fodder.
Yes, my fodder, bring out my hay.
Now, once again, you write these beautiful books, and you seem so open and so prepared to accept. Do you feel that this is one of the problems nowadays with people, that they are conditioned not to accept, not to be open?
No, I don't. To be perfectly honest, I think it's the other way. I think there is a thin veneer of I must research, I must investigate, but we have such wonderful things happening in, shall we say, the scientific reality of the world, physics, nuclear physics, quantum physics, that promote this total idea of life being this amazingly manifold structure. But I think people are tremendously open. But I think probably what happens is they wait, as we said at the beginning of the interview, they wait for the opening, and because they have to live. You know, I have a very, very close friend who's a stockbroker, and we are talking about a really tough guy working in a tough industry where he's dealing with millions and millions of yen, millions and millions of dollars. He can't be seen as flaky. He cannot be. No. Yet I know that this man is a absolutely first-class medium. I have sat in a room with him and watched him produce things out of space, like, you know, Darren Brown has no idea. It's just like, and he is just as much scared by it in its intensity, but he doesn't tell anybody. Oh no, because you can't do that and please your bosses at whatever bank you work at, and you know, you can't do it. You have to have a face for the world. I have another client who is a big man in shall we say, property. This is another guy who is so aware of energies. He can see the fur on a cat change, watch it ripple, see the cat's emotions go. You know, and well, no, I think people are open. I think people are changing. I don't think people are what they were 100 years ago. No. I think people are opening up their other facets. And so some of these films that we see as so-called science fiction, they're not science fiction at all. They're prequels, pre-runners for what is to come. Or the idea of shape-shifting. I believe that's an absolute. I think that happens all the time. People just don't really prefer not to see it. And I think so many other of these extra things that we have are now beginning to be born into our children and our children's children.
That was something else I was going to say. When you say people choose not to see it, once again, is this a case of I don't see it because I don't understand it, and therefore if I don't understand it, I can't accept it?
Well, invariably, if a person can't see it because they can't accept it, they won't see it. It's that simple. If they can't see it because they can't accept it, they won't see it. There is a blocking process going on. It is true. There is a saying that unless you see it, you don't believe it exists. And until you see it, it doesn't exist. You have to know it for it to be. That's why I believe that there is an endless story to this, that the more we learn about jumps, hyperspace, the more we learn about shape-shifting, the more we agree to life on other planets, etc., the more we understand that to be the norm, the more the norm shifts further out and allows for more hybrids to appear. So I think it's a never-ending, wonderful, wonderful road. Very scary, but also incredibly wonderful. So the things that we call ghosts, and I'm now speaking on a personal level because this has happened to me, the things that we call ghosts will one day walk through our walls and speak to us as a person, as a known person, and they will turn around and walk back through the wall, and we will know that we saw them, and it will have taken place over a degree of time like say a quarter of an hour, rather than just hello. And that's when the mind says, no, I didn't see it. It's when it happens in that blink, un Augenblick, in the blink of an eye, then a person will say, oh, I didn't see it.
Yeah.
But it happens over a quarter of an hour. Well, that's a bit different.
Well, that's the other thing, isn't it? The fact that, I mean, when we go out sometimes, I mean, I've done it myself, and you see what you think is someone you know that's passed over. And you think, no, it can't be them. No. But it could be.
Oh, absolutely.
They could be there.
I think that is there was a man called Emanuel Swedenborg. I think 18th century, 19th century, probably 19th century more, who used to be seen in several places at once. He would be seen in one town and at the same time seen in another town. And he was a great mystic, so you can expect that within his mindset and within his life, he could split himself into bits and pieces. But I think we have to remember an intensely personal thing, that when a man dies, he dies and leaves his family, he leaves his wife, he leaves his daughter, he leaves his son. You've got something there that is so unbelievably sad and emotional that there is almost a cushioning effect that goes on around the family and indeed the soul that has passed over. And I'm always a little bit perturbed by the psychics who say, well, I've got Mr. So-and-so here, or Fred here, or whatever, immediately after death, or they talk about them being in the room and that he's saying that and saying this. I actually think that the process of dying and leaving a family is much more personal than that. And all right, yes, people will go out and they will seek what they call proof, but the proof is actually right under their nose, in their homes. It will be a little change of something, a little alteration of something, a little sound, where the love that was between that family continues to exist, and the soul that has moved into another kind of reality continues to love. I can't say this enough to you. Love cannot die.
So the emotion is there always.
Love cannot die. Love, real love, cannot die. If you have a mother who loves her son on the earth, she dresses him in the morning, she gives him his pocket money, he goes to school, she waits for him to come back, she loves him, she baths him, she cleans him, she watches him to grow up, and then suddenly at the age of 10, she falls ill and she dies. Is it possible that that love for that child ceases to exist, like a pair of scissors come down and go chonk? And no way. Wherever that soul is, that love still abounds. And that link is back to her child all the time. Her conscious and loving thought consciousness doesn't end with death. I get very, very upset, I must say, about a lot of the rubbish. I think it's rubbish that is talked about people dying and leaving and never being loved again. It just cannot happen. It is much too personal, much more tender, much more real, and should be preserved in every way.
Okay. So we're going to have to sum up. We're going to have to sort of wrap things up a little bit. But
that's a good one. How would you do that?
Well, just to sort of summarize, if you feel you experience the presence of somebody, you should just accept. You should just openly say, well, okay, hello, how you doing?
Yes, exactly that. Just say, when I saw that, whatever it was, walked by the window, I was excited and happy, and I just said, oh, lovely, great, thank you, or whatever. If I was to give advice to anybody about that, I would just tell them, if they want to see that person and be happy with that person, then to just send out thoughts of love and goodwill and happiness, and tell that person not to worry, that we're fine. Don't have to worry, we love you. If you want to stay, oh, we're so happy for you to stay. If you want to move on, that's okay too. We love you. Thank you for being here. Be happy. And really, that's all you can do.
That's the most important thing.
Yeah.
Okay, well, Dodie, thank you so much for taking all this time to talk to us. We really, really appreciate it. And we will...
You're most welcome.
We will meet up again and we will talk again in the not too distant future.
Yes, indeed. That would be lovely.
So many
things. Thank you, Lee.
Okay, thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.